And now, it's time for another Dice Tower review with Tom Vasel.
Hey folks, I'm Tom Vasel, and today we're taking a look at this really big game here, well, big box anyway, called Tang Garden, which has nothing to do with the wonderful, delicious drink Tang. But this is a gorgeous game from Thundergriff Games, and they make games that look fantastic anyway. And this game has tiling and character selection and all sorts of goodies inside, and I have what I think is not even the deluxe version of the game, but it might as well be. The game is that pretty. So let's jump into it, and then we'll be back. At the beginning of the game, each player is going to get a board here where they're going to keep track as they move up on these 3 different tracks that match the different types of terrain on the board, rocks and trees and water. You're also going to get a starting character here, which lets you jump up. He's green, so I move up one on the green track. And you want to move these tracks up. It's going to give you bonuses and benefits as the game goes by. Each character also gives you special abilities. And what players are going to do is, on a player's turn, they get one main action. And one of those 2 main actions that you can take is you can put out a tile on the board. So you're building the garden by doing this. There are 4 piles around the board, and you can take the top one and place it out on the board. It does not get immediately replaced, so you know, when all 4 are face up, you have more options than everybody else. When placing a tile, you just have to match terrain. So for example, I could put that there and match the trees that are there. You know, I could have also stuck it here below. I could have connected it over here to connect the water. And this also has a wall, so I could connect the wall to anything I want. Sometimes I'll connect the wall because I want to close off terrain. When I connect these 2 like this, I connected a green to a green. So I'm going to move my green cube up 1. If I put this one here, for example, same thing, I move the green cube. If I put this one out, I would get to move the green cube up twice, once for my connection there, and also because I finished off this green. This piece of terrain is finished. I would also get a coin because I connected a path here. If you connect 2 paths, you can take 2 coins, or you can forgo that and move up a cube on any track of your choice. There are also special landscape tiles that when you place these, you'll get bonus points for each of the different terrains that they touch, and they can be placed anywhere, so you can kind of shut down terrain types if you want to. If you place a tile in such a way that it takes up one of these tokens that's set on the board at the beginning of the game, you get a landscape tile. Landscape tiles will be taken, and landscape tiles give you different symbols on that landscape tile showing you what kind of landscape tile this is. This one, you can see a dragon and you can see a city, and these are going to be placed in various slots around the board. So you have these large ones and you have small ones. Small ones have 1 symbol, large ones have 2, and different characters that are on the board are going to be able to see those landscape tiles and get points based on which landscape tile they can see. Another action that players can do is they can place a decoration. Now, if a player decides to place a decoration, instead of putting out a tile, they're going to be drawing cards. And when their turn's over, you're going to turn over the top tile on all these piles, giving everyone else a chance for more new tiles then. When you pick this action, you're going to draw 2 cards, plus 1 card for each face-down tile. So let's say there was 2 face-down. I'm then going to look at the various cards. Well, I drew 3 of the same, 3 bridges. Let's show some various ones that you can draw here. And once you draw these, you decide which one you're going to use. Now, there has to be a spot on the board that can hold that decoration. So the bridge goes on a symbol that matches that. This tree would go on a tree space. Fish might go in the water. So depending what you took, you'll take something of that type and place it on that spot. Maybe a tree there in a tree space, this fish on the water. You know, sometimes you'll find flowers that you can put out. And like I said, there's bridges and there's pagodas and different things, and each of these will go in different spots. And at the end of the game, these cards are going to score points for you. So for example, a bridge here is worth 2 points, while these peonies, by one different flower is worth 0, but if you have 2 different flowers, if you have these 2 different types of flowers together, they're worth 6. And the different trees are worth points based on how many different colors you've managed to put out. So if I put out all 5 colors, I'll get 25 points. So taking these cards and putting out the associated decoration gives you points, but there has to be a space for that decoration on the board. Now, one of the main things you want to do in this game, and this is an optional character you can take, is influence a character. When all your cubes have gotten past one of these characters, or one of these character things, you're going to be able to take a new character. There'll be several characters, and you'll be able to pick a new character, and then you're going to take your current character, find that matching character, and put it in a spot on the board. There's various places where you can put people, including in a pagoda or on a bridge. These have spots to put the people, and then they're going to score points at the end of the game based on maybe something that they can see or something that they're next to. All the different characters do various things. Each character can also use each player can use these lanterns on your turn, and they do various things. You take 2 cards when you place a decoration, or place 2 garden tiles on your turn, or move a character on the board to a different spot, or take any character from the deck rather than one of the face-up ones. And that's it. We're going to keep going until we run out of landscape tiles that are next to the board. There's piles of landscape tiles, and when there's 3 or fewer of those next to the board, then we will score. Players are going to score points for all the different cards that they've gotten, for the characters that are on the board and what they can see, and whoever has the most, and also some points that you've gotten from the coins that you've collected over the course of the game, and whoever has the most points is the winner. So let's talk about components. There's no question that this is one of the nicest games ever made. All right? I should mention that fitting everything back in a box is a real puzzle, and I had to look up online how to get all the pieces in there. It was a bit of a chore to get them in. But despite all that, it's really cool to see all these pieces. Now, I might argue that some of the pieces need glue. I am constantly having trees fall apart or the pagodas come apart. And these pieces don't fit in the board as nicely as I want them to. But let's forget all that. It's pretty. It is really pretty. But I find it to be functionally difficult. When I put characters on the board and I'm looking to see what they see, sometimes it's problematic, sometimes it's hard to see symbols on the board, and even though it's really awesome that all the tiles have weird and cool edges, and I think every tile is fairly different from each other, it's not always easy to see at an instant what goes where. And I'll tell you what, these landscape tiles, first of all, I can never remember which one's the big one and which one's the small one. But also, you can see they're not that easy to see on the board. The artwork for the game is really pretty. The cards themselves are gorgeous, and all the different characters are really well done. The character card quality is exceptional. But and this may not be everybody, but for me, I was constantly having to move the board, stand up, and look at stuff, and I'm a tall person, to figure out where everything went. And while the components are pretty and beautiful, they were actually a detractor for me when playing this. Also, I'm glad all the figures have a colored base, but when you give your colored bases as orange, peach, and yellow, and they don't always quite look like they do in the cards, even that was a little tricky sometimes. And also, the miniatures are okay. They're not great miniatures. So again, it's such a great production. I just wish it was more functional. Now, Tang Garden, so I just came off here after mentioning a lot of component woes, which is, again, a weird thing because I usually love when games are super deluxe. And in this case, the fact that it worked against it, and I was constantly confused as to what tokens meant and where they were and how the cards scored and what the characters did, symbology and stuff, that was problematic. So, but that doesn't necessarily affect my opinion of the game. I mean, it does, but it drops at about a point. Without that, I thought the game was fine. With that, it drops it down to one I don't know that I necessarily want to own. But the game is fine, but I don't think it's great. There's nothing here that I find to be inherently that interesting. There's the connecting of tiles. Sure, I've seen a lot of games like that. There's a lot of those. There's the collecting of cards that give you points. Okay. There's characters on the board with a line of sight that give you points for various things. Well, that's somewhat interesting. There's when you take a card, you need to have the proper thing on the board to do it. Well, that seems more fiddly than anything else. There's moving cubes down tracks to the point where I don't even know where it says in the rulebook what those tracks even are. Like, that theme is not even mentioned, at least in the beginning of the rulebook. And it just feels like this game is trying to be everything. They're like, look, tile laying, and card collection, and moving cubes down tracks, and characters with special powers. You're like, great. Does it flow together in a nice form? It didn't for me. I will say this. I've looked online at the opinions. I'm in the vast minority here. So take it as you will. And others have enjoyed it much more than me. But for me, this game feels like a smaller game that took some drugs and is like, oh, I'm big and strong, look at me now. And you're like, yeah, you're kind of a lightish game, but you have all these rules and all these things and all this going on and this overhyped production, and it just feels like the game's too big for its britches. We often talk about Kickstarter bloat. This game feels like it's a bit of that victim to that. Now, at the end of the day, placing the tiles is interesting, but I found that there's sometimes some downtime in this because someone will look, there are 4 different tiles I can pick from. Which tile can go in different spots? That's going to move me up on these tracks. And then what character will I take? And where will I put that character? And what landscape will I take? And where will I put that landscape? And I'm just sitting here patiently waiting. I mean, there is interesting ideas of, hey, there's 4 tiles, and if you take a tile off one, now if I take the landscape card, I'll get 3 of them. Or I have 3 tiles. That's a good spot to be in. Someone else takes the land. Now there's only 2 landscape tiles, so I guess I'm going to draw cards. And then someone takes another landscape tile. Well, I guess I'm definitely drawing cards at this point in time. And I felt like that balance is interesting, but more interesting in theory than it was in practice. Gorgeous artwork. Love the artwork. When I put the things together, there's some satisfaction about putting those trees and pagodas out. I won't argue that. And I don't dislike the scoring of the cards themselves. More different types of trees. Have one thing, it's nothing, but if you have 2 of the things, then there's 6 points. That's great. Although, again, typical of these sorts of games. And I just kept coming back to the fact that this game felt like it was more effort than the game gave me back in satisfaction. So, Tang Garden, giving you this garden with a Zen-like thing, it doesn't give it that to me. It gave me a little bit more confusion. But once I get past all that, and once I get to the game itself, I just found myself not drawn to it. Like, yeah, I got a tile. Yeah, I put out a tree. Yeah, I put out a pagoda. I got this cool character. Getting characters was the best and most interesting part of the game for me. But it wasn't enough to carry the game by itself. So, that's Tang Garden. Like I said, a lot of other people love it, so check their reviews out. I'm Tom Vasel, though, and I'll see you next time. Dice Tower Judgment, it's pretty, but a little soulless.